left. So let me know
Okay.
that you see it. You see it now?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So little fun fact of the day. I'm not sure if the conversation with Haley is actually going to be brought back to life. And then I don't know if we lost it or not. I was at the kitchen, and I think the connection issues had played a role in that, but
Oh,
our
yeah.
video definitely didn't download. So
Mhm.
if you're open to taking some of the questions that she was going to take, and kind of like she did take, but maybe they're, I don't know that they'll like actually be online ever. So it might not even.
Okay.
So if you're willing to take some of those questions,
Yeah, I mean,
but if not,
I think it depends what they are. It depends what they are.
it's definitely not stuff that you specialize in based on what you told me. It's just,
What kind of questions were they?
like
Or what?
it's FODMAPs, and then there's Hashimoto's disease, and or Hashimoto's, and just random stuff, I guess.
Were those the ones that were those the questions that you had sent me?
Some of them, but it not as like some of the information I actually erased from the text message.
Okay.
It's just kind of stuff that you like specialize in, so that you could get one part of the question. Because some people would like ask, and they would ask one question with like 5 or 6 parts to it.
Yeah, because I looked over, right, because we had talked about, like, to be transparent, I had to like not look up, but like obviously, and that's just like how like most dietitians practice is you have some areas of specialty, but like there's always new research and stuff like that. And so, I mean, I definitely like looked into, the questions that you had sent me.
Okay.
So
cool.
I can answer this for sure.
Okay. So what we'll do is, do you want to answer them kind of in your order, or what do you think?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so I kind of do want to introduce you a little bit,
Okay.
just in case people do end up actually watching this.
Yeah.
So this is Michelle Ververs, and she is one of the dietitians that we work with. Doesn't necessarily work with us like in depth right now, but she basically developed all of the half of last year's menu, and Haley developed the first half of this year's menu. So we kind of work with both of them. But Michelle, why don't you kind of tell what you do, what you specialize in, kind of your background, and what you're up to now?
So I have been a dietitian for 10 years this year. Right now I work in a private practice in Boulder called Essential Nutrition. And I've been doing that for about a year. Prior to that, I worked in public health with families. And then before that, I worked in long-term care communities. So now I mainly work with clients one-on-one, do some teaching for groups. I work with eating disorders clients, emotional eating, gut health, families. I do meal planning. I do a little bit of everything now. And so I work with people once. I do coaching ongoing. So it's kind of whatever people need.
Yeah. So as far as right now, like with what you're doing, how has like coronavirus, how does that impact eating disorders?
Yeah. So it's been a really interesting time. Obviously, everyone is under some form of stress. I think I heard the phrase, like everyone's in the same storm. We're all in different boats, so to speak. And so especially people with eating disorders, or people that have had a history of emotional eating, the current, COVID situation has brought up a lot of things. Food access, grocery stores are stressful. People have more time on their hands. There's just a lot of things that have come up for people that have brought some stress around food.
Yeah. So do you think those bad eating habits increase with a pandemic like this because people stress eat? And then or do you think it kind of like does it help in a way?
Sure. And, I don't want to say that they're necessarily bad, right? So definitely if someone, has an eating disorder and the current pandemic situation is making their eating disorder worse, like, well, yeah, that's not ideal and that's not good. For most, for people that maybe don't have eating disorders, maybe, they've dealt with some emotional eating, stress kind of shows up in your body in different ways. So for some people, they, during this pandemic, they might be feeling like they need to eat more, maybe when they're not hungry. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's actually, there's a lot of reasons psychologically, physiologically, when our body's under stress, for us to kind of seek out and search for food and kind of eat maybe more and maybe when we're not hungry. So again, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a really common thing. And in the reverse, some people find that when they're under a lot of stress, they actually might lose their hunger. They might lose their hunger cues. And so again, neither of those is good or bad. It's just kind of something that our bodies do to adapt to a current situation. But there's definitely ways to kind of address it, handle it, especially if it's, still something that's ongoing now that we've been kind of dealing with this for over a month. There's definitely ways to handle it if it's something that's kind of impacting, your overall health and well-being.
Yeah. What are some good remedies that you do or that you suggest if people are like stress eating? And I myself, I was like thinking even last night, I was like, shoot, I gotta like eat some Oreos, and I don't even know why. I just randomly will have like almost urges now to just go out and like just eat bad, and it's really easy to get on that trail. But what's some good remedies?
Yeah. So, it's definitely very individualized based on the person. I think there's a big group of people, maybe that are off their schedule, off their routine. They're not eating like normally throughout the day. So they might find themselves sleeping in, skipping breakfast, working at home, working through lunch, missing some snacks. And then they might find that by the end of the day, they are incredibly hungry. They're craving, right? They're craving these bad foods, so these processed foods. And for that person, I'd say, well, I don't know that you're really craving those foods necessarily. I don't know if you're craving the Oreos. Have you really taken the time to make sure that you're feeding yourself the way you normally do? When you're not at home or under stress. So often by just making sure that you're having, meals and snacks throughout the day, you'll find a lot of those urges kind of dissipating. For other people, maybe you are eating regularly throughout the day. I like to, when I'm working with clients, I like to, encourage like body checks. So when you find yourself kind of reaching for or wanting Oreos, it's like stopping and saying, okay, am I hungry? Maybe I am, right? So maybe I should think about like, yes, I can have the Oreos, but if I'm actually really hungry, I probably need to eat something with some protein, some fat, some carbohydrates, and then I can revisit these cookies. Or are there other feelings that are coming up? So talking a little bit previously about the emotional eating, again, food can fit a lot of different needs, right? And so, like maybe I'm not hungry, maybe I'm really anxious or alone, right? And that's why I'm going for some food. Maybe I'm tired.
The
Maybe I'm
alone thing
having,
is good.
yeah. So doing a body check, really checking in and saying, am I actually hungry? Okay, great. Like I can have some Oreos, but maybe I should have some other stuff too. Because if I'm actually hungry, I'm going to get through some Oreos and I'm still going to probably be pretty hungry. But if you're finding that, I'm not really hungry, it's not really the Oreo I want, I'm craving some connection, or I'm tired, like I haven't slept well, or, I need to get outside and just take a walk or stretch. Again, that's you kind of checking in and saying it's probably not the food. I think for a lot of people, food is used as a coping tool. Again, it's not a good thing, it's not a bad thing, it's just kind of something that happens. So, having cravings is normal. But I would really say, you know, if you're finding yourself craving stuff you're not normally craving, those two things I think are most common. Again, are you feeding yourself throughout the day? And then two, you know, are you just having other feelings that are coming up that you can address maybe in a different way besides for food?
One thing that my wife had brought up, Katie, is that so she's going to be a counselor.
Yep.
And so what she is saying is she doesn't know about the nutrition side, but what she knows is how the brain recognizes patterns. And what happens is when you start eating something at a certain time of day, or maybe it's sugary, maybe at night, everybody gets that sweet tooth at night, right? Whether it's ice cream or whether it's whatever. She says the conditioning part is what's like a lot of the times it's triggering, you know?
Oh,
So if you do it for a number of
yeah.
days in a row, then it's just like you are automatically triggered type thing.
Absolutely. I frequently help clients identify and challenge, you know, patterns. The human brain is, so interesting and amazing. So a lot of us, like, we get through our day, right? Like, we get up, we brush our teeth, we make our coffee, we do all these things without really consciously thinking of them, which is this really nice way of our body, you know, and brain kind of giving us a break. Because if we had to really think about, this is how I tie my shoes, and, you know, we do a lot of things on autopilot, so to speak. On the, you know, the reverse side of that is when it comes to habits as it relates to food, you know, you might find yourself like just going on autopilot. I'm just going to the pantry at this time every day. I'm not doing any body checks. I'm not seeing if I'm hungry. You know, do I even really want this? Am I even really tasting my food? So I think that's a great thing to, you know, to bring up. You know, that Katie mentioned is this just a habit that I have? Am I just conditioned to, you know, at 8:00 every night, you know, when I put the kids to sleep, I crack open a pint of ice cream. Do I even really like it? Am I even really tasting it? Am I even checking in with my body to see, am I hungry? Do I even want this? So, yeah, I think anytime you can kind of check in and check in with yourself and see, like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
You know, it's great.
Yeah. Well, and I noticed that it's harder to make the habit to say no than it is to actually make the habit.
Mhm.
I mean, it's almost easier to eat crappy food or junk food at night. It really is. And then it's hard to break that habit. And then I find, like, even a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, like a month later, I'm still like, shoot, I just want to eat some cookie dough ice cream right now. And
Mhm.
it's 9:30.
Mhm.
But every single night, if you're eating it for multiple days in a row, you don't think about stopping, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. I think it's important to, you know, when we're talking about like certain foods or, you know, certain times of day of eating, you know, while I obviously believe in the science of nutrition and how, you know, different foods interact in our body. I don't like to talk about good foods or bad foods, or, you know, good times of day to eat or bad times of day to eat. I think it's, you know, so individualized. But I know, especially now, right, when we have more time on our hands, again, most people don't have lots of good coping skills. And so if you're finding yourself kind of in a situation where, like, I'm just always going for the food to cope or deal with something, or I'm doing it on autopilot, again, it's, you know, there's no shame. But I think now's a great time to kind of handle and work on those things. You know, right now I do all of my, you know, appointments online. Most therapists, all therapists right now, they're also able to address habits and behavior change, also doing appointments online. So it can be a really great time to kind of work on some of those things that might be distressing to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a really good segue into the question about
Mhm.
um, our first question that we're going to get into
Yeah.
is, and I guess we kind of have already got into it, but
Mhm.
how proper nutrition relates to mood and depression from a standpoint of blood sugar, serotonin, the gut, which is your specialty,
Mhm.
and any other ways it contributes.
Yeah. So first I want to say, and maybe I should have started with like a disclaimer, is that none of this information is meant to replace any personalized medical advice or individualized nutrition counseling.
Mm-hmm.
So before, changing anything, starting anything, you always want to talk with your doctor or your dietitian. So just want to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Um,
Haley's the same way though, by the way. She's super like, it's individualized. It's hard for her, or for, I guess, for you guys to make any type of blanket statement. So that's not necessarily what it's about. It's just more like, yeah, let's
yeah,
just keep
yeah.
it super general if we can.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I love that question. I think nutrition and lifestyle are really just a piece of the puzzle of good mental health, right? So there's not going to be one food, one supplement alone that is going to prevent or improve mood disorders. So I think I can separate that out into two parts of an answer. So the first being blood sugar as it relates to mood and depression, and then serotonin in the gut. So mood is impacted by many variables throughout the day. So blood sugar increases and decreases throughout the day, depending on lots of different factors, but mostly around meals and snacks. So assuming that, you have a normal functioning pancreas and, you don't have diabetes, insulin is going to keep blood sugar pretty regulated. So food is going to cause your blood sugar to go up, to go down. And I think, I mentioned this earlier. I actually, lots of clients, and this is kind of anecdotal with clients that I've seen, but I actually see a lot of people that throughout the day, for whatever reason, they don't eat enough, whether it's they're busy or, they're dieting in a calorie deficit that is too low for them or not appropriate for them. And so with that, you'll see a lot of blood sugar drops. You're just not eating enough throughout the day. A non-scientific term for this would be hanger, right? So you're hungry, you're angry. Again, there's lots of different reasons why that happens. And so when you're having that hanger, I think most of us have had it at some point. That's a time when your blood sugar is dropping. You might also have brain fog. You just can't engage with people as well. And so that's just like in the short term, if you do this for a day, like you have some side effects to how your mood is. If you're doing that over periods of time, that's not ideal. You're not nourishing your body, you're not nourishing your brain enough. You might go between my blood sugar is really low and then I don't eat for a long time and then my blood sugar peaks. So neither of those are ideal. So I think a very general way to kind of think about blood sugar and mood is frequent meals, trying to eat every couple of hours, usually 3 to 4 hours. That usually keeps, your blood sugar and your energy levels in check, and in turn your mood. What that looks like what those meals and snacks look like, definitely, depends on the person. But I would say definitely frequently eating every couple hours. That is ideally how our body likes to just kind of operate. The caveat obviously is like overnight. Most of us, we stop eating, we go to sleep, we wake up, we have breakfast. But generally just eating throughout the day, that's going to keep our blood sugar really in a good kind
What
of
are
range.
those, and what are those meals look like? Like, is the snack like celery peanut butter, as
Yeah. Yep.
almonds and an apple, and then what do the meals look like?
Yeah. So you're talking about food pairing. So if we want to talk a little bit more specifically about like what meals would look like, carbohydrates, you never want to just have them by themselves, right? So if you just have an apple, which has, it's made up of carbohydrates, you're going to be hungry pretty quickly after. And what that looks like for blood sugar is, while apples have some fiber in them, that will slow down how fast your blood sugar peaks, you still want to pair it with some other foods. So you want to look at foods that have protein, foods that have fats. So when you think about like an apple and peanut butter, you have the carbohydrates from the apple, and then in the peanut butter, you have some fat, you have some protein. It's really going to provide for your blood sugar to gradually increase and slowly decrease. So yes, you always want to, the best that you can, right? Try to plan your snacks around, doing 2 or 3 things. Meals, when I'm talking with people about, meal planning and what they want their plate to look like, it's like you want to do a carbohydrate, you want to do a protein, some fats, and then fruits and vegetables with it. Again, it looks slightly different for every person, but that's like the recipe for satisfying meals that are going to keep your blood sugar, from peaking too fast and then dropping.
Right.
And again, when we come back to that mood, the more tightly regulated we can have our blood sugar, we're not having these, big peaks and drops. We generally feel better. Our mood is better.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really good question.
Okay.
The second part of that question, you had said serotonin in the gut. So we are still really learning about that link between our brain and our gut. We know it's there. We know it's present. Research, is ongoing. We know that there is a link between, both ways, between gut health and mental health, and then mental health and gut health. So they kind of talk to each other. So I looked, again, because research is always changing, a recent meta-analysis from this year. So a meta-analysis is a research study that looks at lots of research studies. So I guess for people who, aren't often looking at research studies, it's like a good research study, to change all of our recommendations, it wouldn't be just like, oh, I had 20 people and we did it for a couple weeks and now we're going to make all of our dietary changes based on that. It's like studies like that, they have their place in time. But when we talk about these really big studies, and a meta-analysis would be, again, a study that is looking at lots and lots of studies. Those conclusions from a meta-analysis let us know that, like, actually what this is, what this is saying is we have there's a lot of stock in that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So a recent meta-analysis from earlier this year that it was published did show a link between a healthy diet and some protection against depression. So what is a healthy diet, right? That's a very loaded kind of statement.
Individualized.
So, yeah, well, so they defined in this meta-analysis, they defined it as specifically like a Mediterranean-based diet. So a Mediterranean diet is a diet that is based on the Mediterranean region of the world, right? So olive oils, fish, sparingly with red meats, lots of grains, fruits and vegetables. That is what a Mediterranean diet is. And they also did find some protection when there's a lack of an inflammatory or Western diet. That also was helpful against, protecting against depression. So kind of how I interpreted this, and it wasn't super shocking. We've known for some time that a traditional Western diet isn't great for us. But again, I would take that, again, that's a piece of the puzzle. They definitely highlighted that, yeah, it's a part of it. There are so many other factors to depression, mood disorders. And so that can just be one way to support brain health, support mental health. But it's not there to replace any other, interventions.
I see.
So generally, an anti-inflammatory diet, and a Mediterranean diet is a very good example of that. That is something I would encourage if you're thinking about gut health as it relates to mental health. Checking for nutrient deficiencies. So vitamin D is a super common nutrient deficiency this time of year. We get vitamin D from a few food sources, but then also from being out in the sun. In the winter, we're not really exposed to the sun, or we have sunscreen on. So we might find that we're vitamin D deficient. So that would be, again, you want to make sure that you have tested that level, that you don't just start taking vitamin D, because that can actually be harmful. But that could be another area to kind of just check if you're kind of handling, wanting to eat to support good mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, and I want to put this in there as well. It's not to say that, I can never have French fries, or I can never have Oreos, or I can never have these things. But when you're looking at your diet and what you're eating overall, day in, day out, week in, week out, it's like you want to make sure that, a Mediterranean type diet is really the base of your diet. Again, having those Western foods here and there, it's not going to cause you to have a mood disorder, to have depression, to be, any of the other things. But then also, if thinking about these foods, your relationship with food, your relationship with body is contributing to, right, your overall mental health, then you definitely want to talk to a doctor. You definitely want to talk to a dietitian, because that's important too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always find that like the routine of eating healthy in and of itself, like obviously you have a direct result of feeling better when you eat healthy, but I think the symptomatic routine of it, of like getting up and actively thinking about, did I eat? Like, do I need to eat? Is this my third hour of not eating? Do I need to get a meal in? Do I need to get a snack in? And your brain's kind of always turning, and you almost like shift your entire focus on it, and I always feel like it's more healthier just from a routine basis, and staying up to par. And then I just naturally have more energy. And then that is what makes me want to go work out, because I got this energy and I really feel like I could go outside right now and run 2 miles, as opposed to if I have a burger with fries and a couple beers the next day, I'm probably not going to run 2 miles,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, so some of the work I do with my clients, working on eating intuitively and tapping into their own kind of like intuition with their body. And that's kind of what it reminds me when I'm hearing, how you think about your body, how you think about, how do I feel? How do certain foods make me feel? I will tell you, a lot of people are not aware of like even their body's hunger cues, right? So even their body saying like, this wasn't enough food, or it's time to eat, or, this food made me not feel so good and now I don't have energy. So that's actually a part of what I do in practice, is helping people really connect with their bodies, find, and same thing with movement, right? So you talk about like, I don't want to go for a run if I've just had like a burger and a few beers. It's like, I really help people, again, not to say that there's good foods and bad foods, but really help them and cultivate tools to notice like, how do certain foods make me feel, because it's so important. I think a lot of people, again, they pick foods because they think they should eat them, or they saw that this, there's this fad diet that's saying, eat this, or there's a fad workout that says, do this. And it's like, does any of this actually feel good? So I think that's important to kind of think about as well.
Excellent. So if you'd like, we should jump in to a couple of the technical questions.
Yep.
Because I think we're getting within like 10 minutes of time here.
Yep.
So the second question that I had sent you, it was about low FODMAP foods and how accurate those are for people with IBS or Hashimoto's or inflammation issues.
Yep. Yeah. So I know the FODMAP question came up a lot. So, first, FODMAPs are carbohydrates found in many common foods. They can be difficult for your body to digest. And so in some people, they can trigger gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, and other symptoms that are associated usually with what we call IBS or irritable bowel syndrome. A lot of people have a diagnosis of IBS, but they don't really know what's triggering it. It's pretty common, and the symptoms can kind of vary. And we actually manage IBS with food, therapy, psychotherapy, and sometimes medication. So when we talk about FODMAP is a diet that is appropriate for some people with IBS. It stands for fermentable, so meaning easily broken down by bacteria in your digestive system. Oligosaccharides, so these are short chain carbohydrates found in wheat, onion, garlic, and beans, just as an example. D is for disaccharide, so that's two sugars that are together. An example would be like lactose in milk. Monosaccharide, so that would be like glucose, galactose, fructose, so fruit sugars, and polyols, so these are sugar alcohols, and these are found usually in like sugar-free gum, and then naturally in like pears, apples, cauliflower, all that stuff. So I hear people kind of start a FODMAP diet. It might not really be appropriate for them, or maybe it is appropriate for them, but there's a systematic way in which you follow a FODMAP diet. So it's never something that you want to just kind of start on a whim. I generally recommend for somebody that, is appropriate for, and again, that generally is IBS, you do it for a set amount of time. You have to look at additives. You have to look, right, because I talked about like sugar-free gum or mints. So you really have to scrutinize like everything that you're putting into your body. But you do it for a set amount of time. And then at the end of that set amount of time, you go ahead and you challenge your body with the different types of carbohydrates. Now, for most people, they don't need to follow a completely low FODMAP diet forever. For a lot of people, it's actually just a couple of those carbohydrates that are kind of the problem carbohydrates for them. So for people that say, the FODMAP diet's not really working for me, I'd say, like, did you really look at all the additives? Did you really do it? Did you do it for a set amount of time? And then did you go back and did you re-challenge? So again, that's how I generally do the FODMAP diet with clients. It also can be appropriate for people that have SIBO or a bacterial overgrowth in their small intestines. Again, there's a whole other protocol that goes with that. Mm-hmm. Outside of those two conditions, the low FODMAP diet's really not going to be appropriate. So the question was about Hashimoto's, inflammation. There's a lot of ongoing research. There's a lot of kind of buzz about autoimmune diseases, especially in like functional nutrition. So kind of my best answer to kind of address that Hashimoto's or any other autoimmune disease. And for people that don't know, Hashimoto's is a type of hypothyroidism. It's very individualized. There are some people that have found help with the autoimmune protocol diet. It doesn't work for everybody. It's kind of like a paleo diet. But again, it doesn't work for everyone. So again, it's like you really want to work with somebody. Again, I don't recommend, just kind of doing it on your own, because there are a lot of considerations before you start cutting foods out. And then the question about, the guessing game or food sensitivity tests, I do want to say there are a lot of food sensitivity tests that are marketed. Every once in a while, like I see an ad on my Facebook. So they're IgG or IgA food sensitivity tests. They are not recommended by the American Academy of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology. So those tests, are generally a waste of money. So those like home tests that you buy, just because the IgA and IgG, it's a part of kind of how our immune system works. Those are things that just happen when we eat foods. So if you're eating apples frequently and you take that test and it says you have a reaction to apples, it doesn't mean that you're sensitive to apples. It just means that you're eating apples regularly. So
Wow.
yeah, so I hate to, that they're a waste. They're a waste of time. They're a waste of money. That being said, seeing an allergist, so if you think you have a true food allergy, that is a test of an IgE immune response. That is very valid. There are also people that have food intolerances, and there are systematic ways that you can remove common, intolerances and then re-challenge them. But a test that you buy offline is not going to be an answer to, autoimmune diseases, cures, things like that. You want to look, if it sounds too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. So an allergist is a good place to start. A dietitian that's well-versed in elimination diets and re-challenging. At our practice, Essential Nutrition, where I work, I will occasionally do a food sensitivity test called MRT, or mediator release test. This is still actually something that not all dietitians use. It's very common in functional medicine. It's still something that I don't try to sell to every client. I don't think it's appropriate for every client. I have a long list of things that I kind of check in with first before I even recommend that. Because again, it's not a fix-all thing. When we think about immune function, just how our body works in general, it's one test is never going to be this cure-all. So I guess to kind of lump that all together and sum that all up, my best advice, is to work with someone, with credentials that knows what they're talking about. Again, I'm not saying that you can't, try things on your own, but like I kind of highlighted, even, that really common low FODMAP diet that's recommended for a lot of people. Again, most people aren't doing it correctly by themselves. So I'd say work with somebody, make sure that you're, not wasting like your time and unnecessarily cutting out foods that you don't have to.
Excellent. Okay. As far as, there was like kind of an addition to that question too, and it was, what's the best natural remedies for digestion?
Yeah. So less is more. Okay. So I'll just say, if anyone is trying to kind of sell you something, a quick fix, supplement, question that, right? Digestion is very complex. And first and foremost, and this isn't, it's not a secret, right? But first and foremost, regular, consistent meals support healthy digestion, right? So if you're eating consistently, around the same time every day, around the same amount every day, that's going to be a really good start to just how things are moving through your system. To break that down a little bit more, making sure that you're drinking adequate water. Again, that's going to be a little bit different for everyone else, but it's usually about drinking your body weight in pounds, cutting that in half, and that's what you drink in ounces. So if you're 150 pounds, doing about 75 ounces of water, about 5 servings at least of fruits and vegetables every day. They're full of fiber, so they just kind of promote regular good digestion, regular movement, right? So whatever that looks like for you, yoga, running, don't care, but it's very helpful if it feels good. Adequate sleep and stress management. So again, going back to the brain, the gut, again, there's a lot of things that go into digestion. Nothing, very basic, but this is really where everyone should start. So before you start piling on supplements, make sure you're doing those things. Yeah. Some common supplements that I see often for gut health. So HCl, which is what our body or what our stomach makes to help digest food. I see it very, 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 very commonly recommended, just by different people. I actually recently did a gut training with a fantastic functional nutrition, or not nutrition, a functional medicine doctor in Boulder. And we kind of went over like, this is actually way over like prescribed and recommended. It actually can do more harm. And the normal 30-year-old female with no issues, I don't need to supplement, I don't need to supplement with that. My digestion is working just fine. So it's kind of been this like, catch all recommendation that, oh, you're having digestive problems, here, take this. So I would strongly discourage from taking that unless you talk with the doctor. The second supplement, that I see as far as like digestion, I think it's like the next most common is a probiotic. So again, kind of going back to gut health, and probiotics are found naturally in foods. So they're found in fermentable foods like kefir, yogurt, and when you eat them and consume them, they help kind of inoculate or support a healthy gut flora, which it's all the bacteria that live in our gut. And so again, when we talked earlier about like mental health, gut flora, we know it's important. Again, it's very ongoing research. A probiotic though is something that I think that most people, it's like very low harm. It can help just with regular kind of digestion. Again, it's not going to ever take the place of like the foods. So that's why I went back to that first kind of comment on just making sure that you're, eating.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want a good probiotic, a good rule of thumb is, again, making sure that it's actually a good brand. So you want a good medical grade brand of a probiotic. If you're looking at numbers on the bottle, you want to look between 25 to 50 billion at least CFU. So that's just like how much bacteria, like how much of the probiotics are in the probiotic. You want to look for the lactobacillus strain, but then you also want to look for like multiple strains of probiotics. And then I usually, especially if you're having just like gas or stuff like that, I actually recommend not having a prebiotic in the probiotic. And what a prebiotic is it's food for the probiotic. But that's something that you can take daily. There's very little harm, and it can often help with digestion. So those are kind of like, again, there's no like quick tips or like tricks. And obviously if you're having, pain or other issues that are concerning, you don't want to try to self-diagnose. You want to see a medical professional. So yeah.
So overall, nutrition is kind of like the forever game.
Yeah.
Lifestyle change.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the good thing too is, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? I think that's important to know, especially as we're getting, maybe try to make our grocery trips, shopping trips spread out farther. If you're running low on vegetables the last day or two before your grocery trip, we know in the long term, that day is not going to really matter too much, right? It's what we do, day in, day out, week in, week out, year after year. And the more consistent you can be, the better. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to cover?
I don't think so. Gosh, I could talk about, nutrition obviously forever.
Yeah.
It's probably why this is my job.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I want to say that it can be a good time for people to work on their health. If they feel like I have the bandwidth, I have the time and resources, it can be a great time to meet with a dietitian. It can be a great time to connect with a therapist. But also if it's not something that's, that you have the bandwidth for right now, like that's okay too. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So what's your guys' routine right now? I know that you have a husband and you have a 3-year-old. Peyton's 3.
Yep.
So what kind of routine do you guys, just for your family and to give people just tips, about what you're doing every day just to help out here and there.
Yeah. So it's definitely changed over the last couple weeks. We've consolidated our grocery shopping down to 1 day a week. We've actually been doing a meal or a grocery delivery service since Peyton was like born. So we do all of our shopping. We get all of our groceries delivered. How I've changed things is I've just made things easier. I'm actually a pretty basic, like lazy cook. So I keep ingredients pretty basic, which actually right now is really helpful. So I don't really have any big expectations about, 20 ingredient meals. I just try to keep it basic. So that way, if I can't get something, I can easily swap out my protein or my vegetable or my carb. And I just try to make my meals, again, like I mentioned, it's just super basic. I try to, I was actually having, losing some hunger cues a couple weeks back, I think just from stress. And so I had to remind myself, like, just to kind of eat when I wasn't really feeling like it. So I just try to, eat about the same time every day, have my snacks, about the same time every day. We still are utilizing, lunches for my husband. We're still doing through Supernatural Eats because it's just this easy way to not really think about, those meals for him. So those have come in really, those have been really helpful still.
Thank you.
Yeah. But really we've just been trying to keep, consistency as far as the times we eat, times we have our snacks. I really try not to stress if I kind of fudged a little bit and, I messed up and I don't have enough vegetables. We didn't eat my 5 servings of fruits and vegetables. It's like, cause I know in the long term, it's like, we just kind of make up for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's all I got. I really appreciate you coming on, talking with me. Like I said, I hope I can find the video with Haley too, as well. So because she covered a lot of the questions, and that'll be pretty good for everybody to hear both your guys' perspectives on a lot of stuff, which it's almost like similar.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. If anybody has if anybody has more questions, so the practice that I'm at, we actually do free 20-minute exploratory like meet and greet calls to see if, if you feel like you want to start kind of working with a dietitian. And like I said, I do everything over the computer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in network with United Healthcare and Cigna and
Mm-hmm.
Aetna. So that can be a really affordable way to kind of start handling.
What if people just like you and they want to follow you? How can they follow you?
Yeah. So, gosh, my social media presence is very sporadic. But I, sometimes update my Instagram with personal things. But I'll also, make sure we link my practice
Mm-hmm.
that I work for, Essential Nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
We have a good social media presence too. So
Mm-hmm.
if you want to kind of know more, the owner, the owner Lisa, and the 2 other dietitians I work with, we all kind of have the same philosophy. So we kind of put stuff out there regularly. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna let you get going, at least with
Awesome.
the recording, and we'll chit chat a little bit afterwards.
Okay.
But this is
Sounds
Michelle
good.
Ververs, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
See ya.